What is up, YouTube? Today, I want to give you all the actionable advice that I can give you on how you can make photography your career this year. Now, I know there are a bunch of videos on this topic all over the internet, but I feel like a lot of people are sugarcoating what it actually takes to become a professional photographer, and especially what it takes to then make a sustainable living as a photographer. So today, I am going to be 100% real with you, and I might be bursting some of your bubbles. Also, throughout the video, please keep in mind that my views on these things are from a European or German perspective, and that the photography market wherever you live might be different. If you're looking for information on anything specific, I will put the contents of this video and the respective timestamps on the screen right now. The first thing that you should be doing if you're considering making photography your career is understanding the current photography space. The value of photography has drastically changed over the last couple of years. About 20 years ago, photography was still an actual craft. If you were a client that needed a good photo, there were a lot less people that were actually capable of doing it, because you needed to know how to operate a fully analog camera, how different film stocks perform, and then you needed extra people that were sufficient in developing, enlarging, printing, analog post-production, and all that good stuff. So the amount of resources that you needed to make a single photograph were also way higher, which obviously meant that every single photo was more valuable by default. But if we jump ahead just 15 years, everyone is now capable of taking a decent photo with their smartphone. And roughly 90 million photos and videos are shared to Instagram daily. And as photography and everything that's related to photo productions has become way more accessible, and clients usually need way more photos for their communication, the bread and butter of the photography industry has sort of shifted away from these super big budget productions to smaller productions with smaller budgets that happen very frequently. So for most people, the reality of being a professional photographer is probably not going to be having 1 or 2 big shoots a month where you deliver a few very well-crafted images to your client, but having 1 or 2 shoots a week where you deliver maybe up to 100 photos to your client that just have minor editing and your presets slapped onto them. The next thing you need to understand is that your photos need to be solving a problem for someone. And no, just having beautiful photos is usually not the problem a client is trying to solve. When I first started out, I assumed that once I was going to be good enough to take beautiful images, people would just hire me because surely they would want some of my beautiful images for their business. And then they would pay me to shoot images in my super very own unique style. Because I mean, that's why they hired me and not somebody else, right? And I think that's what most people think when they're first starting out. But let me tell you that for most cases, this could not be further from the truth. 99.9% of the time, the main thing that your client is going to care for is making money. And your photos are supposed to help the client solve a problem that they need to solve to make money. In portrait or headshot photography, the problem the client needs to solve might be landing a job or landing a commercial shoot if they are an actor, for example. In product photography, the problem the client needs to solve is being able to properly showcase and advertise their product. And in social media or content creation photography, the problem the client needs to solve is being present on social media so they can build an audience and then monetize it. People rarely care for the photos themselves. No one wants photos just to have photos. So if you want to make a career out of your photography, you need to stop thinking about how you can take good photos by your standards and start thinking about what photos are best at helping your clients to make more money by solving their respective problems. The next thing I want to do, because I already touched on it briefly, is to define the different niches in photography. Now, there are a million different niches in photography, and a lot of them are going to be very different when it comes to what it takes to being a professional photographer in that area, and very different ways of how you're going to be making money in that respective niche. But I feel like there are only a few that actually make up about 70 to 80% of the current photography market. The first is commercial or advertising photography. This is going to be your big campaigns for big brands. Stuff that is going to be used all over the place. Billboards, magazines, websites, stores, you name it. Next up is wedding photography. Now, this one is pretty self-explanatory, and I think it's honestly one of the safest niches in photography because most likely people are going to keep getting married, and most of them will want someone at their wedding that is going to take beautiful photos of one of the most important days in their life. The third niche is event photography, which I think is also pretty self-explanatory. You're going to be running around all kinds of different events, photographing what's happening in most cases so that the client can afterwards showcase the event through different channels online. And the fourth and last niche is content creation. Now, this is going to be every kind of photography job where the main purpose of the resulting images is to be posted on social media. And in this day and age, realistically, this is going to be the case for most photography work by a mile. Doesn't matter if you're shooting sports, real estate, business stuff, or whatever. If the main purpose of the images you're creating is to be posted on social media, your service is content creation. Now, there are a few other photography niches that make up the main chunk of the remaining 20% of the photography market that I briefly want to touch on. There is real estate photography, also pretty self-explanatory and depending on where you live, very, very hard to do full time. Also a niche where realtors are starting to do a lot more stuff just by themselves if you're not really up in that high end of the market. There is portrait photography, which used to be a really good business, but since it has become so easy for everyone to take decent photos and people are taking photos of themselves and their friends and family on a daily basis, it has become very, very hard to make a sustainable living in portrait photography, especially when you're not from a really big city. There is fashion photography, which has seen significant pay cuts since the decline of magazine culture. And if you're in that niche, you most likely will have to do some sort of e-commerce photography, so taking photos for online shops to stay afloat. There's also travel photography, which does have a decent market size, but is mostly occupied by photo influencers and is most likely going to be dependent on you having a large online following. So this is a vastly different business model. There's definitely a lot more niches in photography and a lot of them can be very, very lucrative. But from my experience, these are the most prominent ones. So now that we have defining the niches out of the way, the next thing I want to talk about is actually picking a niche for yourself. If you want to build a sustainable photography business, you should pick a niche rather sooner than later. Now, you should definitely try a lot of things early on. But once you've found something that you really, really enjoy and that clients have a need for, you should try to position yourself as an expert in that niche. This makes it much more likely that clients will identify you as the one person that they should call if they are in need of your service. And it makes it a whole lot easier for you to communicate and market your services. Now you might think, but am I not going to lose a lot of potential business doing this? And you might be right in the beginning. But if you want to build a sustainable photography business, you need to be playing the long game. And if you don't niche down, you're always just going to be that one photography guy. And don't get me wrong, you could definitely make a career out of that. But whenever you'll find yourself in a situation where a client has to decide between hiring you for something that you do from time to time and hiring another guy that only does this one thing and has a huge portfolio in that area, they are very likely to hire the other guy. Also, the only way to get to the really high-paying clients is by building a great reputation in your niche, which is a lot easier if you're just focused on one thing. So while you might be losing some potential business early on, in the long run, you are far more likely to get consistent work and higher budgets. All right, now that we have the more theoretical stuff out of the way, I want to talk about some actionable steps that you can take to get you started. Once you know what kind of photography it is that you want to be selling to people, you will need to build a portfolio to prove that you are in fact capable of shooting the photos that you intend on selling. My advice would be to do 2 to 4 free shoots depending on what niche you picked to build a solid base of work that you can then show to potential clients. So if you want to do portraits, ask 4 of your friends to sit in for you. If you want to do wedding photography, ask your friends and family if anyone is getting married soon or know someone that is, and then offer to shoot their wedding for free. If you want to do content creation, chances are that you know someone that has a small business or that your friends and family do. So reach out to them and offer to stop by for an hour and shoot some content for them. Now, the only reason I'm telling you to do this for free is because you can't be running around expecting people to properly pay you for something that you've never done before. But you're only supposed to do this until you've built a very small portfolio, just big enough to show potential clients that you actually know what you're doing. You're obviously not going to immediately land high-paying clients from that point on. But now you're at a point where you can reach out to potential clients and be like, hey, this is what I could offer you. This is what I would charge. Would you be interested? So for example, you could be making a post on Instagram saying, hey, I recently started this wedding photography business. This is what my work looks like. If you would be interested in having me shoot your wedding or know someone that might be, feel free to reach out. Or you're going to look up local businesses that don't have the best social media presence and reach out to them. And once you're able to land one of those gigs, you will be able to then build up your portfolio with more actual client work, which is only going to further validate your expertise while reaching out to new clients. Now, even though you're starting to make money from your photography, I still think there is a case where you want to be shooting for free. And that is when you feel like there is something missing from your portfolio. However, in that case, you should take time to identify what it is exactly that is missing from your portfolio and then set up a shoot that is going to fill that gap. Only then should you be shooting for free because it benefits you. Whenever someone is reaching out to you and wants your service, they should always be willing to pay you for it. My next advice would be trying to be profitable from the beginning. Now, as a photographer, you're never going to be profitable right from the very beginning because you will have to invest in some form of camera gear that is very likely going to be a lot more than what you're going to be making on your first shoots. What I mean is that you should not fall into the trap of believing that you need two of the newest camera bodies, 4 G Master lenses and a $4,000 MacBook just to get started. I personally bought my Sony a7 III back in 2017 when it first came out, just because my previous camera got stolen. And with it, I bought this Tamron 28-75 f2.8, which I believe was $830. And since then, so over the last 6 years, I've shot at least 75% of everything I'm doing on this lens. And that's not just photography, that's also videography. I actually only own 2 real lenses, and that is this one and the Sony 35 1.8, not the expensive 1.4. And that is filming this right now, and I believe it was something like 500 euros or something. All the other lenses that I own are some sort of analog vintage lenses that each cost me something like 70 to 120 euros. I've also been editing on a $1,000 Windows desktop PC up until, I believe, 6 months ago. To make photos that are capable of making you a lot of money, you do not need a lot of gear. So take some time to define what it really is that makes your photos valuable to your clients. And I can assure you that 99.9% of the time, it is not going to be having that f1.4 aperture. So start small and only add gear when it really adds to your work. My next advice would be to be realistic about how much money you need to make. Once you start making money from your photography, you might be thinking, damn, I just made $400 in a single day. If I do this every day, that is going to be 8K a month. But as a creative freelancer, you are not going to be booked every single day. And there are also days where you will have to do stuff like marketing, administration, taxes, all that fun stuff that you get to do when you run your own business. So the days where you actually get paid also need to account for the days where you do not get paid at all. Now, day rates and how many days you're actually going to be working is going to be drastically different between niches and how big or small your shoots might be. But realistically, you're going to be looking at anything between 1 or 2 shoots a week and 1 big shoot a month. For example, you won't be able to make a sustainable living of 2 $300 portrait shoots a week, but you could make a very good living out of doing 1 10K commercial shoot a month. My next advice is don't take photo influencers as an example. Now, when I say photo influencer, I mean every photographer that is really big on social media, because they are not professional photographers. And I don't say that to discredit their work. A lot of them are amazing photographers, but photography is not their paid occupation. They make money by monetizing their audience through things like advertising, brand deals, and selling their own products and all that good stuff. And most of them never had a successful photography business for an extended period of time before they became a photo influencer. And if you are looking to run an actual photography business, you should not take someone as an example that is not running an actual photography business themselves. In conjunction to that last point, my next advice is going to be to not focus on social media to build your photography business. Now, this is probably going to be a controversial one, but let me explain. Personally, throughout my whole career, I have only gotten about 2 or 3 jobs through Instagram. And those were all very, very small jobs, where someone that was friends with someone that I'd been shooting for reached out to me and was like, hey, could you maybe also shoot some photos for me? I have never had a random person or business stumble across my Instagram profile and then reach out to me for an actual big budget production. 99.9% of all the work I'm getting comes either from word of mouth or my personal contacts. Now, I know there are a lot of people that are having a drastically different experience when it comes to social media and landing clients. For example, because some of their work has gone viral and now they are reaching tens of thousands of people. I also think for niches like wedding photography, where you are most likely going to be selling to real people and not to businesses, having a proper social media presence can also make a lot of sense. But even for wedding photographers, from my experience, the most lucrative audience to get in front of are actually the people attending the weddings that you're shooting. Because if they are friends with the bride and groom, they are 1, definitely going to see your photos, and 2, they are most likely in an age range where they are likely to be getting married. So they are your best potential customers. I also think the biggest downside with trying to build an audience for your business on social media is that these days it's simply not enough to just show your work on social media and maybe post a behind the scenes story from time to time. Realistically, you will need to be making short form video content, and you will need to be making it on a very, very regular basis. So what ends up happening is that people spend a bunch of time creating content that they maybe don't even enjoy creating in the first place, instead of spending their time on things that will actually help them to land more clients and make more money, or just simply improving their craft, which inherently is going to make you more money at some point. And my last piece of advice is to sit down, take a good amount of time, and think about whether you really want to make this your career. Because once you make this your career, you are going to lose your fun little hobby. On some days, you will have to do it even though you don't feel like doing it. Also, you will be shooting and delivering a lot of stuff that you actually don't like. And clients will definitely be a pain in the ass, thinking that they know better than you what a good photo looks like. And at the end of the day, no one is ever going to care as much about your photos as you do. Not even close. Oh, and it's also not exactly the most stable job in the world. Don't get me wrong, if everything works out, this is one of the best jobs in the world, at least in my opinion. But whether everything works out or not is going to be very, very uncertain. And a lot of times it's going to be dependent on things that you can't really control. And that is all the advice that I can give you if you want to make photography your career this year. I really hope this video finds the right audience and helps as much people as possible. If you watched until now, I would really appreciate it if you considered subscribing to my channel. Now go tell somebody you love them, and see you in the next one.